You're standing at the edge of a cave, and something is wrong. You felt it before you heard it. That specific kind of silence, the kind that isn't empty, the kind that's full. You lean in. Nothing. No movement, no shape, just black. And then a click, then another. A burst of them, sharp, uneven, bouncing off the walls like something is drawing a map of you. You freeze. And then it screams. Not one voice, dozens, maybe hundreds. High-pitched, chaotic, almost mechanical. Like nothing you've heard before, not in a forest, not in a nightmare, not anywhere. The sound spills out of the cave and wraps around you, and your body is already moving backward before your mind can explain why. You couldn't see what made that sound, but it could see you. It had been watching you the whole time. Let your eyes adjust long enough, if you're brave enough, or stubborn enough to stay, and you'll catch it. A flicker of light deep inside the cave. Dim, almost imaginary. Then another, and another. And slowly, with the particular horror of something that was hidden and is now becoming visible, you begin to understand what you're looking at. Those aren't reflections. Those aren't minerals catching the light. Those are eyes. Large, dark, unsettling eyes, built over millions of years to pull in whatever thin trace of light still exists at the edges of complete darkness. And when even the faintest beam catches them, when your flashlight sweeps across the cave wall for just a fraction of a second, they don't glow softly. They don't shimmer. They shine back hard, like glass, like mirrors, like something that was designed to be seen in the dark even when everything else refuses to be. Now, multiply that. Dozens of them, hundreds, arranged in rows you can barely make sense of, hovering in a space where you still can't see bodies, can't see wings, can't see anything that would explain why so many points of light are staring back at you from inside a cave that 30 seconds ago you'd have sworn was empty. No movement you can track. No sound in this moment. Just those eyes watching. The cave was already watching when you arrived, and what lives inside is a bird. This is the Oilbird. Found across northern South America, Venezuela, Trinidad, parts of the Andes, the Oilbird spends its life in places most living things avoid entirely. Not shallow caves, not rock shelters or ledges with a view of the sky. Caverns. Deep, winding, lightless chambers where the darkness isn't a feature of the environment. It is the environment. Where the temperature and the silence and the total absence of light create something that feels less like a place and more like an absence of one. And inside these caverns, oilbirds gather in colonies, hundreds of birds, sometimes thousands, packed into the dark together, navigating without light, communicating in frequencies that bounce off the stone, living entire lives in a place where the sun has never reached. If you walked past the entrance without knowing, and most people do, you'd never suspect a thing. Just a hole in the rock, just shadow. But if you pressed your ear to the stone on a quiet night, you'd hear it. and you'd probably keep walking. Because birds aren't supposed to do this. They belong to the open sky, the visible world, the logic of feathers and flight and sunlight on a wing. Even the ones that move at night, the owls, the nightjars, they rest somewhere you can picture, somewhere that still belongs to the world you know. But the oilbird chose something different. It chose a world where nothing can be seen. And once a creature steps outside the world you understand, once it stops following the patterns your brain expects, it stops feeling like part of nature. It starts feeling like something else entirely. Those clicks you heard at the entrance? That wasn't panic. Those weren't alarms. They weren't random noises echoing around a cave. They were intentional. Each sound travels outward from the bird's beak at speed, hits the cave walls, the ceiling, the bodies of other birds, the edge of a nest, the outline of an intruder standing in the entrance, and comes back, milliseconds later, carrying information, building a picture of the space in real time, constantly updated, shockingly precise. The oilbird uses echolocation, like a bat, in total darkness. Almost no bird on Earth does this. It's the kind of adaptation that takes an incomprehensible amount of time to develop. Millions of years of pressure, of birds that couldn't navigate the dark, dying before they could pass on their genes, and the ones that could, surviving. Generation after generation, until you arrive at an animal that can fly at high speed through a lightless cavern, thread itself between rock formations, land on a nest the size of a dinner plate on a cave wall, and do all of this without using its eyes at all. And then it leaves the cave and switches. Because outside, the oilbird has extraordinary night vision. Large eyes built for low light, capable of pulling in enough photons on a moonless night to navigate dense jungle canopy. Two completely different sensory systems for two completely different worlds, and the bird moves between them without hesitation. So when you heard those clicks surrounding you at the cave entrance, that bird wasn't calling out blindly. It was constructing a perfect real-time map of the space around it. It knew exactly where you were standing. It knew before you knew it was there. And if that isn't fascinating enough, there's the matter of what it eats. Because you'd expect a cave creature, something that's adapted this completely to darkness and enclosure, to feed on something that makes sense for that world. Perhaps insects, cave-dwelling organisms, something that fits. But the oilbird eats fruit. Soft, ripe, fragrant tropical fruit from trees deep in the surrounding forest. Which means that every single night, these birds leave the cave. They pour out into the open air, sometimes hundreds of them, and scatter into the jungle. And there, in the dark, they use both their echolocation and their exceptional night vision to locate fruit hanging from branches that a human with a flashlight would struggle to find. They pluck it in flight, they carry it back, and before the first light of dawn touches the sky, they return to the cave. A creature that belongs to two worlds, the open forest and the sealed dark, and fully inhabits neither one. Passing between them in the hours before sunrise, carrying something living from one side into the other. There's an old kind of unease that comes from things that exist between categories. Things that are almost one thing, but also something else. A bird that lives like a bat. A cave creature that eats forest fruit. An animal of the dark that navigates by sound, and then by sight, and then by sound again. Your brain reaches for a file to put it in, but that file doesn't exist. And things without a file have a way of lingering. At some point, humans found these caves. They heard what you heard. They stood where you stood, at the edge of the dark, and felt that same instinct fire. Stop. Listen. Go no further. But unlike you, they went in anyway. Deep, with fire carried on a stick into a place that had never seen fire before, into a living darkness that erupted around them the moment the light touched it. Hundreds of birds screaming, wings brushing the cave walls, eyes catching the torchlight and throwing it back from every direction. The sound alone must have been enough to make a person question the decision to enter. But they kept going. Because they had learned something. They had learned that inside these caves, in the nests built from compacted fruit pulp on the cave walls, there were chicks. Young oilbirds, still weeks from their first flight, fed constantly by their parents on regurgitated fruit. And because of that diet, because of the sheer caloric density of tropical fruit delivered night after night into a body that isn't yet spending energy on flight or foraging, those chicks grow dense. Not just large, heavy, thick with stored fat in a way that seems almost unnatural for a bird. Fat that sits just beneath the skin, that renders easily, that burns cleanly and brightly. The chicks couldn't flee, they could barely move. So people reached into those nests, in the dark, surrounded by the screaming of thousands of birds, and they took them. Not for feathers, not for meat, though that came too. For the fat. Boiled down, rendered, poured into lamps. The fat of a creature born in total darkness, used to make light. Indigenous communities across the Oilbirds range used this oil for generations. Later, European colonizers discovered it too, and the harvesting scaled. Entire colonies were raided. Caves that had held these birds for centuries were entered season after season. The chicks taken in large numbers, the oil collected and used and burned. And eventually, in that particularly human way of naming things after what we've extracted from them, the bird became the Oilbird. Not named for its wings, not for its sound, or its strange eyes, or its extraordinary navigation. Named for the thing inside it that we wanted. Picture that cave during a harvest. Torchlight carving orange shapes out of the black. The sound, already overwhelming in silence, now amplified into something almost physical. Thousands of birds in distress, a roar of screaming that would have been audible from well outside the entrance. People moving through it all with their hands outstretched, feeling along the cave walls for nests, for the warm, immobile weight of a chick that had been fed and tended and kept safe in the dark by parents who had no defense against fire and human hands. It must have felt like a fever dream. Like stepping through a wall into a world that had its own rules. Rules you didn't understand and didn't need to understand, because you were only there for one thing. And then you walked back out into the light, carrying what you came for. And this is where the story turns. The Oilbird didn't come into our world. We came into theirs. The darkness wasn't sinister. The clicks weren't a warning. The eyes weren't watching with malice. They were just eyes, belonging to animals going about the only life they knew, in the only place they'd ever been safe. And we walked in with fire, named them after what we rendered out of their children, and called them the strange ones. So the next time you're standing at the edge of that cave, and the sounds make your skin crawl, and your brain sends up that old, quiet signal, something is wrong in there. Maybe sit with a different question. Wrong for whom? The Oilbird doesn't know your name. It doesn't track you. It doesn't hunt you. It isn't aware of you as anything more than a shape that appeared briefly in its echolocation and then, mercifully, moved away. It's simply living, clicks, mapping the dark, wings tilting through passages too narrow for anything with fire to follow. Chicks waiting in nests built from the compressed remains of 1,000 midnight fruit runs. The fear you felt at the entrance wasn't coming from them. It was coming from the edge of your own understanding. From the precise moment your brain reached for a pattern and found nothing. From that specific ancient discomfort of standing at the border of the familiar and hearing something on the other side that doesn't translate. The Oilbird has never followed your rules. It was in that cave before any human named it, before anyone carried a torch through its colony or rendered its young into lamplight, before anyone decided it was strange or useful or worth being afraid of. It'll be there long after every name we gave it stops mattering. And as you pause at that dark entrance, listening, with a chill running down your spine, ask yourself, who's the real monster in this cave?